We're live. Hello, Culture Matters podcast. Before I introduce you to our guest, we're doing 20 push-ups. I'm going to count it out. All right, ready? Go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Holy cow. I got a quote for you right here. This is good. We just did 20 push-ups. Here's my quote before I introduce our guest that I can attest. They just crushed these push-ups as well. Be careful lest in casting out your demon, you exercise the best thing in you. Friedrich Nietzsche. My good friend Greg Rushin, Russian Motivation, is back on another episode of the Culture Matters podcast. Right before we hit record, we were catching up, and he's like, "Hey, are we going to bang out 20 push-ups for this podcast?" And I was like, "Sure." And I immediately hit record. And what through my mind was, this is the last thing I want to be doing right now. Thanks for the motivation, my friend. Thanks for coming back. I can't believe I just did 20 push-ups because I couldn't even like bend my arm this morning. I was so like effed up from my training session, my trainer. So
No
that was
problem.
pretty epic. Thanks for coming back.
Yeah, thanks for having me back, Jay. It's great. Great to do a set of push-ups with you as well.
Yeah, that was easier than I thought. I got a curiosity. Why is it in your view that we convince ourselves that we can't do things, and
You
then
know,
boom, as soon as we start, it's easier than key lime pie, dude.
yeah, absolutely. I think that has an effect on everybody's day throughout the day. There's so many things that we always are put up against that we can't do, that we tell ourselves we can't do. And I think a lot of it has to do with our alignment. We might think our body is not willing or able, or our mind or our emotions, but when you just throw everything in alignment together, yes, my body's capable, my mind's there, the emotions there, the thoughts there, you just do it. And it's fun to power through those struggles, those hurdles.
Why do you think it's so fun?
I think it gives you a lot of motivation. It's kind of like when you go to the gym and you leave the gym, that feeling you get, just like you said earlier, you just crush the day. It's a very powerful feeling. So I think when we power through those elements in our life that kind of block us, it just feeds the fire, right? Just you got to have more and more and more, and it's power to just crush whatever it is that you're doing.
What do you think are some of the things that people may not recognize in their life that are actually stunting their ability to keep their word to themselves?
I think it's a good question. I think it's a lot of just lacking the direction and the commitment to themselves. And I always tell people, when you can check the physical boxes in life, the mental boxes become almost easy. And physical boxes to check don't necessarily mean 5 days in the gym. You don't need to run 5 miles a day, but going for a walk at night with your spouse, or waking up early and going for a walk. Just those little check boxes that are easy to check, that we all know that we can do them. And once you build upon those boxes and put more and more in front of you, then it just becomes the mental blocks that we come across and the mental issues that we come across. It's just so easy because we have that power behind us. We're like, oh yeah, no, I can do this. I can get through it, just like I did my workout or my run or whatever it may be.
You think it stacks?
Oh, for sure it stacks.
Why?
You know, I think the reason why it stacks is just because it's hunger. Once you do it, you're like, okay, I can do that. And then you want something else. And then when you do that, it's like, okay, I did that and that. There's two things that I accomplished. And then there's more power for you as an individual to stack more and more on top of them. You just get more out of your day, more out of your life, more meaning.
What are some of the because you interact with a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, disenfranchised executives that are seeking purpose? What are some of the struggles today, right now in our current market?
Well, first of all, in our current market, I think ever since COVID-19, employees of organizations feel that they can just leave freely and the loyalty is really not there. So one thing that I really noticed, especially in my most recent corporate job when I was dealing with many business owners, is the owner's vision and goals of the company oftentimes don't align with the employees. Now, I'm not saying that they need to be exactly the same, but the employees are not listened to a lot, and the owners have that vision and the direction that their company is going, but the employees might have an entirely different vision and goal set for themselves. And I think if you can get those to kind of go down the same path, the business is much more successful. And when you do that, then I think that there's a little bit better understanding of the employee's values and the employer's values. And the employee feels a little bit more valued when their boss or the employer structure says, hey, what do you want out of life? What do you want out of this job? And when they can get that in alignment, then you just see revenues go up, profits go up, and it's a much better atmosphere to work in.
It seems like common sense, but where's the breakdown?
I think a lot of it is businesses run people and people don't run businesses. And, a lot of the simple personal development practices that you can put in front of you on a daily basis can really turn that ship around, and it can put the people driving the business and not the business driving the people. And I think that's where a lot of that breakdown happens.
I see you all over social. What are you learning about your own journey from sharing all these insights via, online channels?
One thing I'm learning is how much people really are looking for that extra edge. I started Russian Motivation for many reasons, but one was just to help people. It seemed like there's a lot of people looking for a little extra edge in life. And when I started popping up on social media and trying to grow that, the outreach has been phenomenal. And I can't believe how many people are actually like, hey, I need a little bit of help. From
Wow.
simple things like basic finances to big things like I want to step out on my own, start my own business. So it's been a really unique journey, and I really admire all the people out there just looking to push harder and go faster, stronger.
On the finance standpoint, the personal finance standpoint, what are some of the, I guess, resounding struggles that you hear from people? Like, are there certain things that many people have in common they wouldn't recognize?
Yeah, I think
Fallacies, myths?
Yeah, and I think the resounding commonality there is the what they have been taught, what they have developed through conditional values, conditional beliefs from their parents, from their grandparents. And a lot of people on the personal finance side, when they reach out to me for help, it's typically because they did not have good teachers. They didn't have parents that really showed them the way, and or the parents did show them the way, and that's not the way they want to go.
Hmm. What about, like, I guess big obstacles for people that take on mentors? Where do they let the mentors down?
Probably the most common area is when they're uncomfortable with
Hmm.
something. That's when they let the mentors down. And that's, we all face that in everyday life. There's things that we're comfortable with and not comfortable with. And when you're working with a mentor, I think that when you get uncomfortable, that is a fear, and fear is good. That means that there's opportunity. That means there's growth. But when somebody is uncomfortable with a certain situation, they usually put up the roadblocks. They usually put their fists up and they don't want to go any further.
How do you handle that?
It's a tough one to handle. But, part of it is you hired me to be your accountability partner, as well as a mentor, as well as a coach. I'm going to hold you accountable for doing this because it's going to grow you and you're going to get a benefit from it. And it's not 100% close ratio. Some just simply don't do it. But at least, in my line of work, I have something to go back after them. If they didn't like the outcome of something, I can reiterate what they did not do.
What relationship does accountability have with responsibility in your view?
Well, I think the accountability it's kind of like it's the overarching element to responsibility. There's a lot of people that are not responsible, but that accountability partner is going to hold them responsible. And accountability partners, it's a two-way street. And every time that I've said, all right, I'm going to hold you accountable for this, there's something in it for me. Just give you an example. A buddy of mine, he was kind of going through a little rough time, and he wanted me to hold him accountable for just simply motivating his day. And I said, okay, what are you thinking? He goes, I want to do 100 push-ups a day. And I said, okay. And he was not going to the gym at the time.
Wow.
And he had in the past, and he wanted to get back in the gym, but he just wanted something simple. Hold me accountable for 100 push-ups a day. So I did that. And day one, I texted him. I said, did you get your 100 push-ups in yet? And he said, no, I'm just about to do them. And I said, okay, here's the deal. I'm doing 100 push-ups a day with you. Every time I've been an accountability for partner for somebody, it's always reciprocal to some degree. And then, the 100 push-ups a day, that led to 100 push-ups, and then maybe 50 squats and 50 ab exercises. And then the dude's back in the gym 3, 4, 5 days a week after several months of, just 100 push-ups a day. So it's so beneficial to both people.
Yeah. If you hadn't done it with them, what do you think the result is?
Well, one, I think he would have done the 100 push-ups a day, and I would have held him accountable for it. But I don't think it would have morphed into what it morphed into. The extra squats, we were pushing each other, and then he's going to the gym and he's texting me. And meanwhile, I had a pretty, I had a pretty solid regimen at the gym. But when he started going to the gym, then I realized, like, this dude's kind of pushing me a little bit. I better step up my game. I was just kind of in the typical gym rut, 10 of that with this much weight, whatever it may be. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, I got to look to where I can improve. And then once he started pushing me, of course, I push him back. And, without me reciprocating on the 100 push-ups a day, I think it literally would have been 100 push-ups a day every day for him. And I would have pushed along on my normal gym routine.
You think there's a connection with, the employee just doing their job versus the employee elevating into the next level of their career development?
Yeah, absolutely.
Proportional to their boss.
Right.
Like, what's the lesson for the leader? Someone listening to this that has subordinate that is not doing what they say they need to be doing. So that the accountability isn't working. It's just words. I'm curious what you think on that.
Yeah, that's a good question.
So like change the dynamic, right? It's like the employee or the subordinate of the manager. The manager is there to hold the subordinate accountable with their presence.
Yeah.
So it's how much of it is words and actions, and what's the result?
And I think that kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier, and that's kind of the alignment there. So if the boss wants a certain direction and wants to hold the employee accountable for it, I think they have to get into that employee's head a little bit and try and see things from the employee's standpoint and see where, if I was this employee, how could I get this train moving down the correct path? And I think I heard a quote. I can't remember who it was, but somebody said, become the buyer. And I loved that because I use that so often now. So in this situation with the employer,
was it
the
Jerry
boss,
Akoff?
It may have been Jerry Akoff.
So I'm thinking there's a book though of some of the buyers, and
it may have been, but I use that so often, and that like that employer needs to become the employee. So it's not always just a buyer and seller, but it's two relationships, right? So if that employer can become the employee and see, okay, how can I view the direction that I want the business or my boss to go? And when you can flip that switch, you become a better salesperson, which ultimately holding somebody accountable is a degree of selling. But you can also become just a better leader. You can become a better employee too, because if the employee sometimes sees things through the eyes of their boss, they may see the direction and see the light and want to push toward it. But I think it's,
what do you think of that tension with, essentially do as I say, not as I do?
yeah, for sure.
How do we balance that, right? Because I'm hierarchically dominant to my subordinate because I once did what I'm asking them to do. And now
Sure.
that I'm hierarchically dominant, they're supposed to listen to what I have to say,
Right.
but they may not follow my words until they see me do it. But positionally, I don't have to do it anymore.
Sure. Yeah, that's I think how can you build that motivation in that employee to see it? And I think a lot of it is the future of the company and the future of that employee within the company. And if that path is painted a little bit for that employee, I think that there's a little bit more drive there. But if an employee feels stuck and they feel that they're never going to go anywhere with the company, their performance level is probably going to be just as capped as their position.
How could listening to this, that's, let's say, in a leadership position, absolutely recognize they have disengaged employees? What are some
Well,
of the signs?
yeah, I think that's a pretty easy one to recognize if you are an employer. Performance of the company, whatever it is, if you're in sales or if you're in production, whatever it is, if those metrics go down, there's obviously an issue, and that's something that needs to be looked into. And I think a lot of that can come from tracking. You have to have the right metrics to track within the organization. And typically what you track improves. Even if you don't put any measure in place to make the improvement, the tracking itself will typically develop the focus that is needed to improve that.
Doing the tracking.
Doing the tracking. And I think if that tracking is showing that we're not producing, we're not performing, we're not selling, then it might be an employee issue where the employer needs to re-engage that employee and find out exactly what's going on.
The immediate successes right now, like what do you see people thriving in this market? What types of word tracks are they using?
I think the people that are really thriving, I'm going to answer it a little differently. I don't believe it's an exact word track. I almost think it's how the words are delivered. And the way that the people that are really thriving right now are delivering words with an extreme amount of excitement behind it. They develop that space around them that people want to be a part of. And that's where I really see the people thriving, is when they're just really robust about the way they communicate. And you just kind of there's a gravitational pull there.
Well, have you been going on podcasts?
No, I have not been going on podcasts.
What's your theory on this medium and what we're even doing? Like how does this all play in, you think, with business culture today, business in general?
Well, I think it just gives different perspective. There's two people that are in and out of businesses every day, and there's a lot of business owners and employees that like to listen to certain podcasts. And I think that just having real conversation about how we feel really can be a very good connecting factor for somebody that is listening.
Do you listen to podcasts?
I do.
Which are some of your least favorite?
You know, I don't listen to them. The ones that I don't have
Yeah,
a
it's like
favorite,
paradox.
I don't listen to them.
I guess like well, so let's start with the favorites and why.
Well, I like Rob Deerdeck because he is a serious business entrepreneur, but grew up as a skateboard rat. And
Yeah, and
I
you were a
also,
snowboarder.
yeah, and I grew up skateboarding and snowboarding, and I'm still a very avid snowboarder. So he's one of mine. I really like him. I like Bedros
Why is he
Koulian.
successful though? Rob? What is it about him that we can learn from?
Again, I think his communication is very real and it's very
Huh.
fun to be around. But at the same time, he's a very intelligent business person.
Wow.
And I think that his energy makes people want to go his direction. The way that, you know, he's negotiated certain sneaker deals through the past and certain skateboard board deals, um, you know, businesses have just wanted to go his direction because of his energy and his positivity. And he's just you know, if you ever listen to him, he's just a fun guy to listen to. He makes you smile, he makes you laugh, but his communication is very on point and it's accurate. And I think anybody can learn from a business entrepreneur like that.
Bedros, you mentioned.
Bedros Koulian, I really like his kind of no BS attitude. You know, he's right to the point, but he also has a track record to prove that he got there through the just working hard and putting himself out there and just being an overall good dude.
Any others?
I really like Your World Within, Eddie Pinero.
Oh
That's
yeah,
a
you've talked.
it's a phenomenal one. You know, I was making a joke. I was taking a Dale Carnegie class a couple months ago, and I was joking with the people of the class, and I said, you know, my workouts have completely changed over the course of my life. It used to be when I was young and in the gym, I would throw around a lot of weight. It was a dirty, dingy, like basement type gym with Metallica playing. And now my gym is very relaxing and I don't listen to Metallica anymore. I actually listen to that podcast when I work out, Your
Really?
World Within. Yeah. Yeah. And it's I guess the motivation to throw around a bunch of weight really isn't necessarily there anymore. And I do a lot more calisthenics. But that podcast has given me so much motivation. And it really inspires me to think differently. And I think that that is really important. I think we all need to exercise that power to think differently. And Eddie does a good job of kind of making you turn some gears within your own head.
Hmm. You know what do you think's going on with our generation? You know, are we screwed?
I don't think we're screwed. I think that the maturity of our generation is delayed.
Hmm.
It seems like there's more late bloomers than there maybe once was.
Hmm. You think? Well, you think? Well, I guess how are we blooming? Is it information?
I think
Access
it's
to information?
information, but I think that the reason why a lot of our generation is a little bit late bloomer is because we probably didn't have the right information in the beginning. And now information is so easily accessible.
Hmm.
And when we do get those different thoughts in our head and it may be some motivation to go a different direction, we have some pretty good data to look at and we have good resources, and that didn't exist when I was a kid. You know, I remember if I wanted information, we had a CD that I would put in the CD-ROM of the computer and look up the encyclopedia, and that's just so antiquated anymore, and we can get information right now. So when we do decide to shift directions, change paths, maybe it's a little bit easier, and I think that that kind of has created a little bit of the more of the late bloomers.
What messages don't you resonate with? What would like you know, ideologies or on the personal development front that you'd say I just disagree with those ideas. I think that they cause harm.
I think that's a great question, and what I really disagree with is when people try and create followers by putting down other people of society.
Hmm.
Like if you're not as fit as me, you don't belong. And I don't like that. I would rather, if somebody
Shaming.
wants to get fit, yeah, if somebody wants to get fit, I would want to take them along with me and help them from where they are now to where they want to become. I don't think that it's healthy to try and motivate somebody by putting them down and shaming them, and there's a lot of that on social media right now. Somebody that is super fit that
Hmm.
has maybe an online coaching program and just puts down everybody. I don't want to follow that. I don't want to sign up for that
Do you
class.
think that's the coach in you? Do you divide that? Do you look at as a coach as a guide, or how do you define coach?
I define I define coach. So the way I define coach for myself is kind of a performance based, outcome driven mindset. So I want to coach people that want to change themselves mentally and physically. And I think that there's a huge connection between the mental and the physical. In fact, any neurosurgeon on the planet will tell you that there's a big bond between physical well being and mental well being. So that's what I like to do as a coach. I want a performance based, outcome based coaching program that focuses both mentally and physically. I like people, when people want to change, I want them to change entirely.
Hmm. What would you call the type of person that's doing the shaming piece?
A bully.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the Culture Matters podcast. No, that's fair. That's fair. I guess what's in it for them?
I think in their mind it elevates them. It makes them feel more important. It makes them feel more superior, more powerful. And I get that. I certainly get that. There's a lot of people that benefit from that. They personally benefit from it. I just don't think that it's really putting the correct message out there for everybody else.
I think it takes more thought to not just become a bully if one was a victim.
Right.
It's like thinking through what I'm saying, not just being in the emotional response, or
Right.
it's like a portal. Oh wait, what were we talking about? Yeah, it's because you blacked out.
Yeah.
All of a sudden there's like 7 people offended in the audience.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, oh, I didn't say that. Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
uh I guess, where do you think personal development is in the next handful of years, as more and more people share their thoughts? And um I do follow a lot of people that have insights, that have a voice, like intentionally. So maybe I have a biased view because I follow like over 1,000 people. I want to see what's going on. I want to see what's being said out there. So I guess to me, it seems like we have more and more voices.
For sure. We definitely have more and more voices all the time.
What's your view of that? Is that good?
I do think
is it
it's good.
bad? I mean, it's a little oversimple binary there, but what's your view on the value of that?
I think it's good because there's more voices, so there's more choices for people to follow what works for them,
Hmm.
and go down the road that they feel they get the most benefit from. But I also think that with more voices, I think there's more and more personal development guidance out there every day, which is good. And I really think the future of personal development, a really big growth of personal development, is within organizations. And I say that because I've been through so many industry specific trainings to make me a better salesperson, to make me more knowledgeable in certain products, things like that. And then when I come back and I have to deliver that information and that excitement and news or product developments back to my team, a lot of times before I really started focusing on personal development, I would find out that my day kind of got in my own way, and all of that training really didn't do anything. I'd be 3 months down the road And it's like, man, I had all these good ideas and all these visions, and I didn't do anything with it. And I think that when you can show an employer that that happens in their organization, which I have, they're like, yeah, exactly. So rather than spending $20,000 on this industry specific training for your general manager, why don't you work on the general manager as a person first? And then that training will be much better applied. And a lot of employers really realize that, and they say, Greg, you're exactly right. And I think that's a huge missed opportunity right now. And that's kind of a little piece of it that I'm kind of honing in on.
Yeah, how do you see that impacting the culture?
Oh, it's a huge impact. For one, if you can get all the employees and the employers developed to the point where they do have control over their day, and not just their work day, their personal life, everything. When they're waking up on the right side of the bed and their day is already planned before the night closes out, they wake up and that day is already built for them. And it's the culture of the company is definitely going to improve for sure.
Yeah, how do you view culture, in general? Where do you think people misunderstand it? How do you view what it is?
Well, I think I'll tell you, in a lot of the businesses that I work with, culture really doesn't exist, and they realize that, and that's
Wow.
likely why I'm there. And I think if there can be certain aspects of the daily business that are focused on that culture and improving that culture, it can mean a tremendous difference for the whole operation of the company from a profitability standpoint, gross revenue standpoint, whatever you want to look at. If you can align that culture and make a good culture out of that business, it's going to thrive.
Why?
People want to be there.
Hmm.
People want to be there, and they want to push for the health of the organization. And, if you have a team behind a boss per se, and they want that boss to succeed, that's a phenomenal culture. And I've worked in places like that, and I've worked in places that are completely opposite. And I see that on a daily basis. I see places that have that the employees want to do a good job because they want their boss to succeed. They want the owner of the company to succeed. That's a phenomenal culture.
What's it like when they don't?
Well, I think there's a big disconnect between the employer and the employee for sure. And the employer, when that disconnect is there, they have a certain view of what they want out of the business. And that disconnect further exemplifies the fact that the employees don't see that vision. And I think a lot of that is just a communication breakdown where the employer, the boss, doesn't communicate what they want out of the business to the employees. So
Why
then
not?
it's just running around like a rat race.
Why?
I don't think that they really know how to. And I think a lot of the communication from the employer down to the employee is typically, I need you to do this, and here's why, rather than, like we talked about, becoming the buyer and saying, okay, how can we as a team do this, accomplish this task, and then get everybody to talk and make it the employee's view, the employee's idea, the employee's vision. And when that happens, everything goes in the right direction.
The employees' vision of their life has to connect to why the org exists and where it's going.
Absolutely. And this is when I meet with business owners, a lot of times I ask them, what are your employee reviews like? I think you probably know the answer to that question. Well, I don't do employee reviews. I hear that all the time. And I think a lot of business owners and employers, they're scared to do employee reviews because they don't want to hear what might be said. And an employee review definitely should be tracking of the employee's performance, but at the same time, it's just good communication. Am I providing you with everything that you need to do your job to the best of your ability? Just simple questions like that, where the employee is like, wow, this person really cares about me. And because they care about me, they care about the organization. And because they care about the organization and me, I'm going to care about the job that I do here.
Have you found that you've attracted to employers that, I guess, they genuinely care about those questions?
Yeah.
Because the reason I ask that is like, if someone, I just don't, people try to fake that, but it seems to not work.
Yeah. The employers that do have a genuine care, that employer and I usually hit it off pretty well.
What do you think it is about the ones that don't?
I think that there's some ego there. And, I see that a lot where they are the boss. They got to that position because they deserve that position, and they don't necessarily want to share information with their subordinates. And that's also a big disconnect too, when you have somebody that wants to keep employees at a certain level. And I think it's, sometimes it's for fear of maybe somebody doing the job better. But I would thrive if that happened. If I had an employee working for me that I felt threatened that they could do my job better than me, that's phenomenal. Like, that is company growth right there.
Why is it phenomenal?
Just because I think I have an employee that is that driven to potentially come up and take my position someday. That's ultimately, I would want all my employees to have that type of mindset. But if I have that employee, or maybe few employees with that type of mindset, we're gonna crush it. We're gonna, let's go. Let's see where we can take this ship.
What about vision? How can people curate their vision?
Well, one right behind me is a vision board, and I don't think vision boards should be reserved for personal use, personal goals. I think a vision board for a company would be a great asset in the employee break room. And I think that could be reviewed on a very regular basis during team meetings, and see what the employees would like on that vision board as well.
Why? Why is that important?
Well, it ties in the whole culture. If you have an employer that has a vision board of their company, what they would like out of their company, whether it's certain benchmarks of performance or sales. And then if you have employees that contribute to that too, like, hey, what if we did this? What if we build out this part of the organization to create a whole nother product? It's just that open communication that ties everybody in, that helps out with the overall culture of the business. And I can tell you, I've probably seen one or two times where there is a employer vision board of a company.
What was that like?
It's a different dynamic. It really is. It shows that there's future in the company, and I think everybody in that company realizes that. And there's just a bigger vision than what is currently in operation. And the people of that organization, they're extremely excited to be there, happy to be there, and they're pushing hard every day.
How important do you think it is for the ownership to actually work?
I think it's hugely important. And because, one, you see everything, so you know exactly what's going on. And some people say, well, I can monitor it from afar, and I have certain things set up that I can track. And I get that. But when the owner is actively working, not only do they really have a good handle on the way their business is operating, but the employees see it, and they know that they have to be there, and they have to do their job and perform. And I have an example that I kind of want to use local resort to our house. It's a 4-season resort, ski and snowboard in the winter, golf courses in the summer. That resort was owned and operated by an individual, and he was there every day.
Wow.
And I actually worked there as a kid, and I was a bellman, so I would carry people's luggage in for them. And part of my job was to make sure that the whole facade of the place looked good. So I would clean the trash in front of the main doors. And back in the day, there was a lot of smokers. So there was an ashtray, 2 ashtrays right outside the doors, and they had sand in them. And it was my job to put on gloves and clean the ashtrays out. And when I did that, I actually drew the logo of the resort in the sand.
Wow.
Because that's how much I valued that place and that vision for that place, and the owner. I really wanted the owner to succeed because he was such a nice guy.
Wow.
Now it's corporately run. The owners are not there, and it's a completely different culture. There is no community among the employees that I can see. We were all friends. We all knew each other, and we all showed up to work with the same goal in mind. Let's make this place the absolute best it can be. And now you go there and it's sad. And I think that has a lot to do with the owners not being present every day. And that whole culture is just broke up. It's non-existent anymore.
Holy cow. How old are you?
40.
No, then.
Oh, how old was I then? I worked there probably from 17 to 22 on and off.
That's cool.
Yeah. So
And that was, it changed your trajectory, the culture.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. In closing, I mean, what would you say the audience should take away from this piece of the dialogue, that they could represent in their own life as their own accountability partner for someone else, and as well as a culture builder?
I think a main takeaway would be focus on improving yourself and pull everybody else up around you. And I think that's really where the accountability partner comes in and builds that responsibility in people. And if there's anything that you want to improve in life, you can start tracking it and put an accountability partner on the other side of it. It's a pretty powerful tool.